Welcome to At the Fence Line with your hosts, Sarah Chambers and Gavin Betker. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to At the Fence Line podcast with myself, Gavin Betker, and Sarah Chambers. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Gavin.
Peace.
Peace.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Doing good, thanks. Yeah. Would prefer it if it was a little sunnier, but I think I'm getting spoiled. The last couple of days have been pretty nice. So
The weather is turning. We're getting there. I don't want to use the S word because it seems to be a jinx these days, but things are happening, and that's an exciting time of year, not just for us, but for the farms that we work with as well. So
it's kind of crazy how late our actual spring is here, because it's been spring for over a month, like technically, according to the alignment of the Earth and the Sun. Right?
Mhm.
We're well into spring.
It doesn't feel like it. This is a bad year.
I was outside in my yard, and this is in the city too, so it's not like I have these big country snowdrifts or anything like that. But I still found a little patch of unmelted snow in my yard just the
Ugh,
other day. Yep,
I don't like that.
a very shady spot near the woodpile. So yeah,
Sorry
yeah.
for
So it's
you.
just I
You gotta
think it's
kick
gone
it.
now. Yeah. All right. So today we're digging into a topic that's I think's been coming up. Well, at least I've heard it come up more and more. Sarah, I think we talked about this before the episode, and it's coming up for you too.
Yes, absolutely.
Right,
Timely
and that's
topic.
yeah, it's growth, and I think some of the reasons it's come up. There's been some stuff in the news, but there's also been some changing in the lending environment. Interest rates are still at a pretty good and pretty decent compared to like long-term historical averages and things like that, but they're definitely higher than they were. Land prices continue to rise. There's been some global trade disruptions that have affected input costs, and at least I work with a lot of grain farmers. Grain prices have bounced back up, but they've been a little bit low, and there's just uncertainty and volatility in a lot of different areas around farm management. That all affects a farm's ability to manage and to grow. And so, growth, that's the topic today. Growth and efficiency, how to analyze your ability to grow, whether you should be growing at all, how to deal with those pressures. So, that's one of the big questions to start with is why do we want to grow? Are we growing just for the sake of getting bigger? Is growing for its own sake? Is it worth it? Is it the only path forward? So we're going to challenge that assumption. We're going to talk about what growth actually means from a management perspective, from a financial perspective, why farms feel pushed towards it, and how you can think about doing it in a way that actually aligns with your strategy and your goals. Because growth doesn't necessarily have to mean number of head, liters of quota, or acres of land. It's about people, leadership, financial structure, and long-term sustainability. Sarah's going to take us down the path of the people side of it, what it means for your management team, what happens if you grow a little bit too fast, what happens with your HR and your capabilities of managing that. And then I'll bring the financial aspect to it, talk a little bit about some financial ratios you might want to monitor, what those numbers are telling you, and then what can happen if you start to maybe outpace your ability from a financial perspective. We'll talk a little bit about cost cutting, consulting, and lender relationships towards the end of the episode, and how you can manage some of those big decisions as well. So, if you've been asking yourself, should we be growing? And if so, how should we do it? This is the episode for you. So let's get into it. Sarah, I just kind of rambled there for a little while, did the whole intro myself. I want to ask you a question to get you brought in here. So why do you think it feels like farms today don't just want to grow, but maybe they have to?
I think the most obvious kind of answer is margins, right? Like I think that that's where everybody's head goes initially when we think about growth. Um, it's not just the pressure, but the need to grow as well. Everything is getting more expensive. People are thinking about, economies of scale. It just looks like getting bigger is the only way to survive right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I get that sense too. I do. Maybe a bigger operation can sustain down years or volatility. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for
I
those of
think
you
one
who
of
are feeling that, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges though is when we think about like why we're trying to grow and are so like are we growing because of reactivity or is it a strategy? So like what do you think about the way the growth mindset has shifted over times in terms of strategy versus reactivity?
Well, from my personal observation, I think that so again, I'm just talking from my most common client base. Western Canadian grain farmers um, should be more strategic in general. So that includes growth decisions. And that's not to say that people and farm owners and management teams haven't used a strategic process instinctively or through discussions with their lenders and their other farm management team members. But I think it could be a little bit more formal. I think that regular strategy discussions, written goals, and then aligning those goals with decisions. So operational decisions, HR decisions, all kinds of decisions, production decisions, but also growth decisions. Because growth and size and borrowing lots of money, that all includes an element of risk. And it's another element of risk on top of the many other forms of risk that farmers deal with. So I'd like to see it shift even more to strategy, to a strategic decision. And I think, yeah, I think it is shifting, and that's good. It's good to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of we've talked about this in a prior episode, but um where people aren't buying land or the most strategic farms we see, they're not buying land just for the sake of buying it, but they're looking at their entire land portfolio and really being critical in their analysis of what land they have that's performing really well versus what might be underperforming. And so, they might take on new, better land, but know that that means that they have to let go of some of the other stuff that they have. So it's not about a number. It's about really being analytical about what you have and how it's working for you.
100% agree. Yeah, and it's good to see that. Um, so with some of the farms that you work with, and maybe you're working with some that don't have that mindset or that application, that process, and you hear them say, we'd really like to grow. We want to get to a bigger size. Where do you think that's coming from? What do you think that means?
I think again back to, what I said earlier about just costs. Right now, everything is getting so much more expensive. It's not penciling out anymore to upgrade your equipment if you've only got a couple hundred acres. Maybe it's so. I think that when we think about the long term of our farm, that's people they want to ensure the success of their farm into the future, right? So right now, it looks like growing in size is the only way to do that, or that might be, what some people perceive. So I think that that's where that comes from at its heart is people want to ensure the success of their business into the future. They want to be able to pass the farm on to future generations if those future generations want that. Um, but that's where you and I and others in our field really where we come in, because there's good growth and bad growth. And it's not just about adding to the size of your farm, adding to, you know, like it's not just about getting bigger, right? So there's types of growth that will help you ensure the success of your farm into future generations. And there's types of growth that will not. So yes, growth can do that for you, but only if we're all talking about the same type of growth, which is good growth, right?
Yep,
Yes, okay.
100%. Yep. Yeah.
So on that kind of train, do you think that farms are clearly tying their growth decisions, like, to their strategy enough, back to their vision and goals, or is everybody kinda skipping that step right now?
Okay, so the farms that have a clearly stated vision, a long-term strategy. They kind of understand their competitive advantage, what they can take advantage of, and they've kind of got that long-term, medium-term, short-term goals. They're doing their regular meetings. The A+ clients that we have, they're tying growth decisions, just like you mentioned. Okay, we can do this, we can do that, but that might mean we have to do that or the other thing, right? So that's good. Good for you guys. Keep going. I think there's still too many farms that don't have their vision and kind of goals, and it doesn't have to be super formal. You don't want to maybe change that all overnight, but take some steps towards that. So to answer your question the way you worded it, no, I don't think anyone's skipping that step. It's just that they're lacking the vision and the goals and the strategy in the first place. So that would be step one. And then when you have that, I think you would find it very easy then to tie land purchasing or increasing the size of your herd or buying quota, any of those types of growth decisions. You'll find that work you did to define your goals and your vision, it lends itself pretty easily to helping you in those big picture decisions. Yeah.
So I've talked a lot about in the past about the importance of like mission, vision, values, and how they can contribute to the culture of your business and your decision making process. So, can you talk a little bit about why it would be important to a farm for a farm to have established these things, done this work in advance of the opportunity coming up?
Okay, great question. So let's say for the sake of most of the rest of the episode, I think I'm going to talk about a land purchase. But that can also mean an increase in scale on a livestock farm or purchasing extra quota for any sort of supply managed industry, dairy, egg, eggs, poultry, etc. But I'll stick to kind of land purchases. So let's say there's one that's just kind of a no-brainer. It doesn't push your financial ratios to the edge. You've got the equipment capacity to handle it and the HR structure and management team to handle it. Then having that strategic um, framework established isn't really going to help in that decision because it's a fairly easy one that I think everyone would just kind of agree and proceed with. And then there would be the whole other end of the spectrum where maybe it's too big, the numbers don't pencil out, we're not ready, we don't have the equipment. So it's not going to help there either because that's also a bit of a no-brainer. We shouldn't do that. It's those tricky ones in the middle where having a strategy is really going to help. And having an agreed upon strategy amongst a farm management team is going to help because it will help get everybody on the same page. I have worked with clients where the numbers pencil out, but people's appetite for risk are different, and so some people want to go ahead with it, some people don't, um, and then that opportunity might pass you by. It's all time sensitive usually, so um, that would help in that situation. And then when the numbers themselves are close, people are kind of on the same page as far as their risk appetite, but it's just really close. And where's the next step? Okay, so the numbers are close. We can do it. What's the next step after that? Well, then we need to make sure that we can handle this operationally, and we need to know whether it fits into our long-term strategy. If you're going to take on extra risk, what's the end goal, right? So yeah, those would be a couple different ways where having it in hand, having that strategy in hand would really help.
I think as well, a lot of times when we look at changes within our business, like we sometimes forget some of the real purpose, the things that we've identified in moments where we're not trying to make decisions. So if you're doing your mission, vision, values, you're doing it with, maybe multiple generations that have helped get the farm to where it is today. Um, I think it's good to reflect back on those things, like how, like the legacy piece, who are we trying to take care of here? It's not just about, again, growing for the sake of growing. It's not just about, do we have the operational financial capacity to support this, but like, is this what we really want? Um, so that's what I have to say about that.
Well,
I work
that's an
I work with a farm and we talk a lot about legacy. And it's been interesting for me, um, because I'm so operationally focused. That's who I am. That's the way that my brain works is like tasks, projects, like I'm very type A. And so when I work with that farm, I have to remember to bring it back to legacy quite a bit and it's good. It stretches that muscle. So um that's whenever I'm thinking about vision, when I'm thinking about, what we're talking about today, which is growth, I always like I try to tie myself back to that piece of it as well. So, kind of talking about that, then do you think are there ways that farms could know if growth is fitting their strategy, or like how do you know if growth actually fits your strategy or if you're just chasing scale?
Well, if that's a great question. If well, I'll go really big picture and really long term. If one of your long term goals is to have a farm that can then support the next generation, and let's say the next generation is two families, right? Let's say you have two children in the farm family and their spouses and their kids, and you want the farm to support them next generation after it transitions. Maybe there is a certain size that you should be working towards getting to so that that can happen. So that
Mm,
would be an example of a really good reason to try to grow. If well, and then I'll go to a different place, but still that big picture. If I reflect on a lot of what I see when I work with farms when it comes to their vision statement and their values statements, um, I'd say more often than not, growth isn't in it is in some of them, but it's usually hard work, honesty, land stewardship, family. Those are the common values that I see. And by the way, I love that. That's one of the reasons why I love working with farmers. But um, growth, ambition, they do tend to pop up, but they're not as common as you might think. And so sometimes it's worth taking a step back and saying, well, yeah, maybe we can achieve our vision and uphold and work to our values. And we don't have to chase this X amount of acres or X amount of quota, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's a big picture stuff there, right? So yeah,
Well, but I think it has a lot of meaning though, because it is big picture. That's what we're saying is, you when you're making these decisions, they should be tied to the big picture stuff. So you've just given a lot of really great reasons why people should grow. Essentially, it boils down to the vision, the strategy of your business, and making sure that growth aligns with that. What are some not so great reasons you think people should be chasing growth?
uh, to compete with the neighbors,
Yeah.
to compare yourself to some other farm somewhere that you saw on social media or in the news or something like that. Um, because you want to keep growing because the last generation grew a lot and now you want to keep growing. That might be a fine reason too. I'm just saying it could be an example of not aligned with what you really want to get out of your farming career. So and then any other, there's should be and probably is many others. One would be, or to categorize them all together, would be anything that adds risk without really accomplishing what you have set out to accomplish long term. Yeah, that's not a good reason to grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, one more. Because the bank will lend you the money.
Yeah.
Not a like that's good to hear. That's great news, but that's
Yeah.
not on its own a good reason to grow. Yeah, because then if you haven't done it intentionally, and you start to grow fast, quickly, or even at a medium pace, but if it starts to outpace your ability to manage effectively and maintain efficiencies, then it can start to cause financial and strategic and HR stress and issues. So back over to you. What do you see in the HR side of things when a farm, you would say perhaps that farm is growing a little bit too fast?
Mhm. I think the most obvious one is hiring the wrong people, right? That would be, if you are if your mindset is like, okay, these acres are coming available, but it means that by next season I need to add 5 people to my team or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to be making the best hiring decisions you could be between now and then if you're feeling in a rush. Um, the other big thing that I see would be not fully realizing or understanding what your people will need to do at that point. So I talk a lot about, end states, the journey to get there, that kind of stuff. So like if growth is the end state, you're going to get those acres, whatever it might be. what do your people need to do between now and then to get there? So the best place to start with that is to think about the end and say, what skills do my people need to have? And then you can kind of chart the course. But that's another big thing that I see is people just assuming that, if you've got the numbers in terms of employees, that they will be able to handle that. And yeah, I mean, it's just not the case. We can't assume that kind of thing about our teams. So I would say that one as well. So bad hiring decisions, making assumptions about what your people are capable of. Um, and then as well, just the culture of your business. What will things look like for your team at that size? Will you be able to maintain culture? Will people just be happy? That kind of stuff. So you really have to plan the manpower and growth beyond just a number of people.
What
And so it's
happens
not,
if
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was gonna say as well that, yeah, so like about charting that course, but it can also be about leverage, and I think that we don't always, in HR, we often think about our team as the people that we have on payroll, but it can also be like, what are some things that I'm gonna have to leverage out at that size? And it could be to someone on your payroll, or it could be like, I'm gonna have to bring in a bookkeeper, and we're gonna have to send that work elsewhere, people that are on contract, things like that. So like really planning about what you're going to need at that size, and what it's going to take to be successful there for your people.
Yeah, that was a lot of good info. When I jumped in there, I was gonna ask you about the culture. When you talked about the culture maybe slipping a little bit, what what's the ramifications or what's the consequence of that happen?
Oh man. Um
Loss.
my brain just goes to like disaster.
Right, right, yeah.
No, 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 it's good. It's such a good question. I think like worst case scenario is you've got this massive farm, you've got a massive team, and people are miserable. You're not
Oh,
managing, in that way. I think when culture gets bad, your business can just turn into a revolving door. People kind of coming and going, or people staying that are just like unhappy. I mean, there's so many things that go into building good culture, but when it's bad, it's real bad.
and
So,
then mistakes happen, right? Performance
yeah,
slips.
well,
Yeah.
mistakes, and also I just see people spending a lot more time on HR than they need to. If you've got bad
That
culture in
yeah.
your business, it's such a like catch 22, right? Because you culture often gets bad because we've avoided working on our HR because we don't want to work on HR.
And then you
It
have to
doesn't
work a bunch on HR.
and then you spend so much time working on HR to try and get out of that situation. So, Um, yeah, unfortunately, I often see bad culture, in a lot of the farms that I work with, especially the bigger ones. Um, doesn't, all hope is not lost, but it certainly ends up meaning that people spend more time on the things that they probably don't want to spend time on.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So, a little bit more to the planning for growth.
Mm.
What would be so just moving away from the culture thing a little bit more into the actual structure, and let's say you're doing it the right way. What would a good management HR structure look like as a team grows, and how do you plan for that?
Mm. Like I said before, I think thinking about the end state, what is success going to look like? What do we need in order to make success happen at bigger scale? Um, Planning people's trajectory to get there. Of course, them being on board with it. If you now you're going to need people in more supervisory roles, or maybe you're going to need someone full time in your shop, or whatever it might be, making sure that, people that's what they want to do, but really charting the course. It's not just about defining end state, everything's happy. It's about all the little micro steps that have to happen in between now and then. What do we need for professional development? What is that going to look like for people's personal schedules? Like, how many hours a week are they going to be putting in at that time? Is that what people want to do? If not, do we need to bring someone else in? Um, and then communicating that with people as well. So it doesn't help if we've got a 5-star employee and we think to ourselves, he's gonna be the assistant manager of this farm. He just needs to learn blah, 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 but then we don't tell him. So you have to communicate with that so that everybody's on board. Everybody's, swimming in the right direction and swimming in it together. We're all going the same way. Our goal is the same. We're all on board with it. We understand the steps to get there.
That's really helpful for me personally, because when we started talking about this topic, my head just goes straight to the numbers. Well, you need to have this, 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 and this. And I'm fully aware because I do some small components of HR help with the farms that I work with too, but not nearly as in depth as you do. Um, but I'm fully aware of that, a whole other bubble of the three key alignments, right? We've got the finance, we talked about the strategy and the vision already, and now you've done a great job of explaining the work that's required to get your team ready. So the operational and the actual people component of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The one question I had for you that's a little bit more kind of a little bit more straightforward. Do you feel that farms as a whole are investing enough in what you talked about in developing their people that they have, or do you see it being more of a we just need the people to get by?
Yeah, I think it's really hard right now with the recruitment landscape for farmers. It kind of feels like land, to be honest, where there's like employees that are, the hourly rate is going up and up and up. It's so competitive right now to get qualified, skilled employees. So, um, it's becoming such like a dollars kind of game. And then what I'm seeing as well is like a lot of kind of revolving door farms where it's getting more rare for people to kind of stick around in one place because the work is so plentiful and the experienced workers are so limited. Those experienced people can be really choosy about kind of where they want to go, if they want to jump around. And so that makes retention more important than recruit. I shouldn't say more important. Retention is important. And it's important for farms not to just think about how they're going to find people, but how they're going to keep them. And that's where what you just asked comes in is that professional development piece. It's that like how are we going to create culture in our farm, a culture where people want to stay. And the first step of that, we talked about it a couple episodes ago, is when you've defined your values. It's really living them. It's not just a piece of paper that sits on the shelf so that when people come and work for you, they can feel that you're living their values. It makes them more confident in what they do. It makes them want to stick around. And so when you find people that align with your values as a business, and as people, it's communicating with them that they align, that, hey, you're great. Hey, these are opportunities that exist and I would love to help you reach them if you stay on my farm. I think that's a piece that's missing a lot is that communication, but I totally get, with the state of recruitment right now, why um a lot of farms are a little bit like gun shy to, make promises to employees when it feels like they're not sure if they're going to stick around. But I would say no, we're not investing enough in culture development in farms right now. We're not investing enough in professional development for our employees and like the right kind of professional development too, because not everybody wants to get their class one. That's what's best for your farm, but that's not what maybe the employee wants and what's going to make him stick around. So if he wants his class one or she, cool beans, but professional development can look like a lot of other things that'll benefit your business and really speak to the employee, what's on their heart as well. So no, short answer, no, I don't think we're spending enough time with that. Um, but I think in general, like you've kind of said as well, this whole conversation about strategy, we farms need to spend more time looking inward. I think we need to examine our business, look at our strategy. Why are we doing things? It's something that we all need to spend more time doing before we start thinking about, the outward, the arm's length employees or the niece that wants to come back to the farm. It's like, get your house in order first, and then we welcome people in,
So
and then we grow.
getting and then we grow. Speaking of getting your house in order,
Mhm,
what would that look like if you've done the work that you mentioned?
mhm.
By the way, before I finish my question, I thought that would be such a lovely question to get from a manager as an employee, and I think our listeners are probably going to skew a little bit more to the management of the farms. But if an employee out there is listening, and your manager asks you what Sarah asked, what was like a couple minutes ago, what do you want to get out of your career and what can I do to help you achieve those personal goals? Like that's awesome. I think an employee would love to hear that.
Well, and that's so, like, the farms that I do recruitment for, I mean, I'm taking it down a tangent, but you opened the door for me to start talking about HR, so you get to suffer the consequences. In the recruitment work that I do, it's part of my check-in. It's my 1.5-month check-in. So normally most farms are doing a 3-month probationary period. So I always say we need to check in at 1.5 months so that we can course correct if anything's not going, for both employer and new employee. And that is one of the questions I ask is like, okay, now that you've been here for a little bit and you're in the groove of things, where do you see yourself going? What are some things that you want to learn that you haven't yet? Maybe you didn't even realize those were things that you wanted to learn until you started working here, so that
Yeah.
the farm can really support that as the employee's career goes, and then we can yeah, we can really talk about it and plan it. Again, it's that trajectory. So maybe it is the 1A. Maybe the employee's like, "You know what? I didn't really realize that I would kinda think that was as cool as I do. I'd really love to get my class 1 someday." Then it's like, "Sweet, okay, like, at this many months, we can send you to this course. We can talk about a pay," like, whatever it might be, but you can plan it so that their long-term vision for being on your farm, they can see it.
Thank you. I didn't finish like I did. I completely opened the door for that tangent, and that was really good. I'm glad you jumped in, but I didn't finish that question. It was supposed to say, and I know we've talked a bunch about what that would look like, but is there anything else we've missed from what like a really well oiled machine HR is looking like when it's performing at its best during a growth phase?
Yeah, I think it's, I kind of said it earlier, but I think it's where everybody knows where we're going. Like everyone, the employees, managers, we're all on the same page with the final destination, with what success looks like, with what, if we grow to this size, what does success look like once we get there? Everybody's on board with that, and we're all swimming in the same direction. And I think that there's a whole, okay, we could do another episode on all of the different, roles and responsibilities, good communication, like all the different HR elements that I think need to be at play in order for everyone to be swimming in that same direction. But that's really what I think it kind of boils down to is we all know where we're going. We all know the path to get there, not just for the business, but for us as individuals as well. Um, it that kind of thing, it removes uncertainty, it builds a lot of confidence in the leader who's leading a team, that everybody know, and those individuals are going to be more confident. I know where I'm going. I know what my plan is. Um, so yeah, I think that building that confidence, it really, really helps. Um, but it's understanding where we're going. We're all swimming in the same lane. We're confident in doing it. Talking about fish a lot today. Just keep swimming. It's like a Finding Nemo moment. Anyways, and as much as I could go on and on, we have to talk about finance too. Because it's not just about the people that are gonna get you there, it's making sure that you have the numbers to kinda get you there as well, right, Gavin?
That's 100% correct, Sarah. I thought you would never ask.
Imagine if you said no.
Yeah.
From a financial perspective, though, so we've talked about the people, we've talked about the strategy, finance, our 3rd bubble. Um, how do you know if a farm actually has the capacity to grow?
Okay, well, first of all, before I even start answering, it can be a complex um, discussion. So just little disclaimer before I start getting into it. I'll talk a little bit about the main points, but it's not everything. Okay, that requires. Let's use those 3 kind of examples again. Sometimes it's a no-brainer. Farm doesn't have a capacity to grow anymore, not right now, and a farm has tons of capacity. If you know what some of the ratios mean and you understand what lenders are looking for, you could look at both of those extremes and understand pretty quickly. Where it becomes more important and a little bit trickier, or maybe not trickier, but it just takes a little bit more work to understand the right decision, or the decision that best aligns with risk tolerance and goals and vision alignment, all that is when it's kind of not so clear, right? But in general, what a lender is looking for, and what you should be kind of thinking about from a ownership or farm management perspective when you're thinking about growth is, do we have the security, so the equity size, to back up an application for more financing. Um, do we need financing? Should we maybe put the brakes on borrowing money and build up some cash? Because maybe this idea of growth for your farm is little bit by bit. So you want to maybe cash flow it on your own. That's another option. But typically it requires financing. And so a lender, yeah, is looking for security and then your ability to make your payments. That would include principal and interest. And so then we're going to need to have some strong operational profit margins, capacity to make those payments. So your debt servicing ratio, that's what that one's all about. And then supporting that debt servicing ratio. So your debt servicing ratio in a nutshell is your capacity divided by your requirements. So your debt servicing capacity is your ability to generate revenue, profit, and so that you can make those payments. So that comes from the income statement, and that's your revenue minus your expenses. So cost control, efficiency, production, sales and marketing, and all the line items that come on the income statement. So those are the first places to look: security, ability to make your payments, and a healthy, efficient farm. If that's all there, then I'd say, yeah, go ahead and explore growth opportunities because you'd be ready. Um,
What
that's
are
the start. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, if that's kind of the first place that people are gonna look when they think about expanding,
Mhm.
um, what are some of the things that you're seeing on a balance sheet that will tell the story of healthy growth versus maybe growth that was too fast?
Yeah, good question. So, the leverage ratio, or debt to equity, there's different terms for some of these different ratios. If the debt to equity, the amount of debt you have compared to the equity that you have is high, then that farm has either grown fast and should maybe, put the brakes a little bit, or they've had, poor years, and they've had to, say, refinance or get some more additional lending against their security to help them get through. And that would be a sign of inefficiencies or straight up bad luck or poor structuring of could be a bunch of things, right? But that would be another sign that maybe the farm grew a little bit too fast, too quickly. Can be a reflection on like what you were talking about with HR and strategy. And so if you've added the wrong people or not invested in your people, and then mistakes might happen. So that's kind of what, if you remember that comment I made, that's where my head goes, right? So people aren't motivated and they put the wrong chemical on the wrong field. Mistakes happen. That could be a big loss. So those inefficiencies on the income statement and operationally, that's what ends up building your balance sheet. So it can be a culmination of several things over several years. But the big one, to answer your question a little bit more simply, is if a farm has had some struggles from that because of fast growth, it'll show up in the structure of your debt to your assets and equity.
Dive in a little bit more for us on the lender and the lender relationships. How is that relationship impacted when we think about growth?
Yeah. Well, so they're going to look at the same thing. So the lenders, if you're a well-managed farm and you have security and you have the ability to make your interest payments and your principal payments, and you've shown steady gross margin and net operating profit margin through a growth phase, and you're still, hitting those targets and those numbers, you are like an triple A prime Wagyu beef. Like you're like gold stars flashing all like that. You are exactly the client that a lender would want, and you actually should take advantage of that and make sure your lender is treating you well. And if not, shop around because there'd be people lined up at the door. So the lenders are in the business of lending money and collecting interest payments. They mitigate their risk through security and annual reviews and checking in on your financial progress. But if all of that is there, then that's that's a healthy relationship. That's not always the case, right? So yeah,
It isn't,
and we talked
and
about yeah.
I wanna
Mhm.
talk about that for a little bit now, is, like, we've seen situations where lenders are kinda slow to shut things down, they're just giving, giving, giving. Um, I mean, you just said it, lenders will give money, they're in the business of lending money and collecting interest. So, when people are looking at efficiency and cost-cutting methods, often one of the first things to go is you and I, Gavin. It's the consultants. Tell our listeners, though, a bit about the work that you do with a farm on an annual basis that might flag for them that it isn't the right time for growth, even when the bank says that it is.
Yeah, yeah. So similar to above, yeah, like a lender, like repeating myself here, a lender could. I have worked with clients where I think, and it's not. I'm not trying to point fingers here or anything, because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're approved and then you sign the paper, it's your decision whether you want to take that loan or not. But if it doesn't, if you're not ready from the HR side of things, if um, your own capabilities of managing a larger operation are less than what you thought, lender's not going to necessarily know that, and then you could borrow your way into some troubles. One of the first things that starts to show up is efficiency margins start to slip. So at X size, we were able to hit this gross margin or this net operating profit margin. And then we've grown by 10, 20, 50% over the last 10 years or something, just as an example. And now the gross margin is a little less and the net operating profit is a little less. Um, those are signs that your ability to manage a larger farm hasn't been as efficient as you were at your previous size. And that's in general terms. There could be all kinds of other reasons for that to happen. But that's where to look to keep an eye on it. Yeah. Sorry, I think I've missed what was your that's oh, right. Yeah, sorry. So that's what I would do and the value that I would bring to that discussion. But I get it. If a farm is analyzing their line items on their income statement, all the different expenses, it makes sense to look at things that don't have a tangible, immediate impact. And so I understand why a farm would look at consulting or other professional fees as a quick way to cut costs. And that makes sense. But I think that decision should be treated the same way as things like fuel expense or land rent expense. Think about the benefits and the costs. And two different ways to look at that is, can we get more for the same dollar? Or can we get the same for less dollars, right? Those are two different ways of increasing the efficiency of that expense item on an income statement. So if you're thinking about cost cutting on a consulting line item, think about it from a cost benefit analysis and think about it long term, because the benefits of working with people like us and others out there isn't always right away. It's more of a long term investment in your farm. And then that ability to make those decisions that we talked about for the last several minutes of the episode, those long term, well informed decisions, we can help you with that. So, yeah,
I want to start winding us down here. We've talked about a
sounds
lot
good.
today.
Yeah,
If a farm is thinking about growing right now, what is the first question you think they should ask themselves?
I think they should ask themselves, am I ready? That's the first question, because then I think that just invokes a lot of follow-up questions. So
Mhm.
they should be looking at HR, they should be looking at finance, and they should be thinking about the why. So am I ready? Yes or no? But then if it's yes, well, why? Right? And so that would be back to the vision, values, and stuff that we talked about earlier on in the episode. Um, if there's no real big reason and you're adding risk, that why is a different kind of question for you, right? I'm not against growth. Growth is great as long as it's for a good reason. And then I wanted to maybe ask you that same question back from your side of the fence. What would you say to that?
We're on the fence line. Yeah, absolutely agree. Vision first. Um, that would be the first question to ask yourself. Is this aligned with the vision for my business? And then I would say secondary would be, have I spent enough time thinking about not just the end state, but all the steps that are needed to get there? Not just what growth will look like, but um, what's going to make that growth successful? What do I need to do between now and that place? So I think that's it for me. I think
Yeah,
that's, yeah.
excellent. Yeah. I think we did a good job of tackling the financial and then the impact on the people as well, because that's really what it all boils down to, right? It's um,
But the people first, then the finance second, right?
okay, okay, sure. Actually, I do agree. The financial piece is there to support the people involved in the business. That I actually fully believe that. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a good spot to start wrapping it up. If there's a couple things to take away for me, it would be that growth can be a goal on its own, but it can also be a tool to help you achieve other bigger picture goals. Again, to a feedback and a tool to help the people achieve what they want to achieve. So whether it is the people or your financial position, growth should be supported from all those different areas across the business, so that you avoid it causing more pressure than progress. So as you think about this from your own perspective, your own operation, you might want to think and ask yourself, why do we want to grow? And are we truly in a good position to do it? So if you have questions, Sarah would be happy to answer all of them for you.
Okay.
But no, reach out. And if there's any other topics or feedback on this episode, you can find us on different social media platforms. We have our website available for you to access to find us. But yeah, on that note, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you the next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of At the Fence Line with Sarah Chambers and Gavin Bedker. If you have any questions or comments about today's episode or would like to get in touch with us, please find us on Instagram at backswath_MGMT or through our website at www.backswath.com. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views, policies, or positions of Backswath or its affiliates. Any reference to specific products, services, organizations, or individuals does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Backswath.